When you start learning Chinese, you quickly come across two kinds of characters: simplified characters and traditional characters. But what is the difference between them, and which ones should you learn? Hi, I'm Gad, and I am here to teach you Chinese. And I believe that anyone can learn Chinese. And if anyone can learn Chinese, so can you. Chinese has thousands of characters that have been evolving for thousands of years. In the beginning, there was no writing system, only the spoken language. And the earliest forms of writing were little scribblings, little markings on bones. Just lines and circles, much like the beginning of other languages around the world. Except with the difference that Chinese didn't use an alphabet. As with English and German, which have an alphabet, they write the sounds of the letters, and the letters make the words. And Japanese and Korean do the same. And over time, these markings became the beautiful characters that we know today. Now, I'm skipping over a few thousand years of history, of course, just for the sake of this video, because the development of Chinese didn't happen overnight. And that is the key takeaway here. They developed over a long period. And they've undergone many changes. And they developed gradually from a simple writing system into the complex characters. From basic symbols into a rich, structured writing system. And in the early days, there weren't that many characters because there weren't that many words. So people didn't need to write down that many names for things or for feelings, for emotions. But as society grew, as the people's thinking got richer, the language got richer, and they needed more characters. Then why so many characters now? Chinese has a limited number of syllables, and each one with a tone attached, one of the 4 tones. But still, over time, these pronunciations and the characters can be exhausted. So, for instance, you would have the pronunciation ma, where you would have one character, and that character would be called ma, and you would use that for many things. But to differentiate, to know, oh, this character is for this thing that we call ma, but another thing we also call ma, and this thing we call ma, you need 3 separate characters, and so on. And that is for each syllable and then each tone. So that is why, over time, thousands of years, more and more characters came to be. Now, I said before that Chinese has undergone many changes. But the biggest change came in 1949, or I should say after 1949, when simplified characters were introduced. Before 1949, there were no simplified characters. And there were no traditional characters. It was just all Chinese characters. But the then leader of China, Mao, he thought that the Chinese writing system was too complicated, that there was too much illiteracy in China. And to combat the illiteracy, he said, we have to simplify these characters, make them easier to write. But the thing is, Chinese already had simplified characters maybe 100 or 200 years before that. It wasn't called simplified character, it was just the character for that thing. And like I said before, you needed to invent new characters. So they added on that character, added strokes, and then wrote strokes around that character to make it a different character. But Mao wanted to go back to that original character. So that's why in Simplified Chinese, you have one character that can mean many things. And in traditional Chinese, where they keep the writing from before 1949, you can actually see that those are two different characters that mean two different things, which provides more context. So you don't have to read the entire text to understand, oh, they mean this meaning for that character. And there was even a proposal to get rid of all Chinese characters and only use the romanization, the pinyin, to use the Latin alphabet to write out the pronunciation. Well, luckily that didn't happen, otherwise we wouldn't have these beautiful Chinese characters. And to be honest, there aren't that many simplified characters. And the way they chose to simplify the characters was actually also a bit random. They just took some characters that they thought were too complex and changed a few strokes, erased a few strokes, and said, here, okay, this one is easier to learn. But was it easier to learn? And did they combat illiteracy? The answer is 2 times no. There's still illiteracy in China, even with the simplified characters. And are they easier to learn? I would argue no. There are more strokes, but do more strokes mean it's more difficult? It doesn't. Yet you have to write a few more strokes. It does not mean you cannot memorize the words as easy as a word that has less strokes. Because again, as I said in my other video, you practice Chinese, you create muscle memory. So whether it's 3 strokes or 4 or 5 or 6, it's all the same. And there are still characters that I think are also very complex, but they don't have a simplified counterpart. They didn't do that for all the characters. Do I think that you shouldn't learn simplified characters? No. Because they do exist. They are used in China. So if you want to go to China for a holiday, if you are studying because you want to attend college there, or if you just want to live in China, if you want to do business with China, you have to know these simplified characters. So do learn these. But here is my tip. Learn the traditional characters first. Because by learning traditional characters, you will understand Chinese culture and Chinese thought better. Because the traditional characters reflect more of the culture and how these characters came to be. Let's take a look at the character for car, for vehicle, which is 车. Now this is the traditional character. See, it looks like a cart with 2 wheels. Now let's take a look at the simplified character. I don't see any of that. So it is easier to memorize these traditional characters because you can actually envision the thing, like the car. Let's take another one, the character for door, 门. Look here. Now, you can see it looks like a door that you can open and close. Let's take a look at the simplified. Less strokes, but you don't recognize it as a door. So traditional characters are more recognizable as the things they represent. So learn the traditional characters first, and then it's easier to learn the simplified characters, because there aren't that many anyway. But that is your choice, because these are your studies. I'm just here to tell you the facts, how they are, and then you can form your own opinion and you can make your own choice. So if you think that learning traditional characters are useless anyway, and it's much faster to learn the simplified characters, by all means, go ahead. If you want a rich and more broader understanding of Chinese language, Chinese culture, Chinese thought, learn the traditional characters. And again, do learn both, because then you can enjoy Chinese TV, Chinese music, Chinese books from all Chinese-speaking countries. Look at it this way. Simplified characters help you get by. Traditional characters help you go deep. Now you have the knowledge, put it to use. I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.